Hello everyone, welcome to Talking Newspaper for Friday 24th of November 2017. I'm Howard.
And I'm Pauline.
We'll start with the Society news for today. On Tuesday there'll be coffee mornings held in support of the Society on Tuesday 28th of November at the Cloisters in Bembridge, 10:15am till 12 noon, and at the End of the Line Cafe in Freshwater, 10:30am till 12 noon. All are welcome. The Dolphins group will be meeting to swim on Tuesday 28th of November at the Waterside Pool Ride. The pool is closed to the public during the session. If you'd like to go swimming, please call the Society first to advise us of your levels of swimming ability. Please note lifeguards are in attendance during the session. On Wednesday, the weekly coffee morning will be held at Millbrook House. That's Wednesday 29th of November. The coffee mornings are not just for blind and partially sighted people. Anyone can come along and have a cup of coffee or tea, as well as a piece of cake. On Thursday, the Knitters and Natters are meeting, Thursday 30th of November at Millbrook House. The group meets from 11am till 2pm. You can knit or just natter, then later in the afternoon, volunteers come in and read to the group from different topics. Any other news? On Saturday 25th of November, there'll be a fellowship meeting at Bethany Evangelical Church, Union Street, Newport from 3pm. The speaker will be Mr. Steve Stubbings. There'll be hymns, a quiz, a story reading, and a short Christian message, followed by tea. A collection is taken from which donations are made to the Torch Trust for the Blind. Hymn books and scripture in large print and braille are available. This month will be different and include the Christmas programme. There'll be no fellowship meeting in December. For further details, please call Mrs. Jackie Moore on 520-797. The bowling group will be bowling at LA Bowl in Ryde on Wednesday 29th of November at 2pm. The cost is £3.95, which includes shoe hire. There'll also be an optional meal afterwards at the Ryde Castle. All are welcome. Please note there's no transport for this group. The Society will be exhibiting a Christmas tree in the Wilberforce Hall as part of the Brystone Christmas Tree Festival to be held from the 7th to the 10th of December. All 7 venues are open daily from 10am till 5pm. This year marks the 21st festival, with all proceeds going to support local and national charities. Further information can be found at www.bxtf.org. We'll also be fundraising at the Brystone School Christmas Fair on Saturday 9th of December, 1pm till 4pm. We're looking into organising a monthly audio book club to be held at the Lord Louis Library in Newport. This would probably take place on the last Wednesday of each month in the afternoon, starting in the new year. If this is a group you may be interested in joining, please register your interest with Laura Jasper, Centre Administrator, on telephone number 522 205 or email inquiries at iwsb.org.uk. Please note there'll be no transport available for this group.
And now we have the scaffolding news. So we start with the Bay and Ventnor area. There is currently scaffolding at Carlton Hotel Esplanade, Sandown, 9 High Street, Shanklin, 7 High Street, Shanklin, 22A Fitzroy Street, Sandown, Kate's Cottage, 69 High Street, Sandown, the Happy Haddock, 87 High Street, Shanklin, 3 Wilkes Road, Sandown, 91A to 91B High Street, Ventnor, Hamborough House, Hamborough Road, Ventnor. New scaffolding is due up at 12C High Street, Sandown, and that's due up on the 28th of November. And now the Cowes area. There is currently scaffolding at Development Site, Castle Street, East Cowes, Hurst, 17 to 18 High Street, Cowes. There are currently hoardings at 272 to 283 Arctic Road, Cowes, and 93 High Street, Cowes. New scaffolding is due up at 20A Shooters Hill, Cowes, and that's due up on the 29th of November. And at Flat 1, 10 Birmingham Road, Cowes, that's due up on the 4th of December. The Red Squirrel Shop and Bella, that's at 73 and 74 High Street, Cowes, due up 2nd of January 2018. Moving on to the Newport area, there is currently scaffolding at Nippert Court, West Street, Newport, 38 Key Street, Newport, 18 Lugley Street, Newport, 38 Chapel Street, Newport, Chapel Cottage, Main Road, Chillerton, 22 Savoy Court, Town Lane, Newport, scaffold on Pyle Street. New scaffolding is due up at Fujifilm, 79 St James's Street, Newport. That's due up on the 1st of December. Ryde area. There is currently scaffolding at St Mary's Church, Ryde, along St Mary's Passage. Oasis Dental Practice, 9 Melville Street, Ryde. The Yard Bridge, 99 New Road, Brading. Dan's Kitchen, Newland St Helens. Opposite the Old Gallery Shop, High Street, Seaview. Wright's and Earl Mountbatten Hospice Shop, 187 188 High Street, Ryde. Overbank, Upper Green Road, St Helens, 163 High Street, Ryde. New scaffolding is due up at the Star Inn, High Street, Ryde, due up on the 27th of November. 69 High Street, Ryde, due up on the 4th of December. Barbers, 12 High Street, Ryde, due up on the 4th of December. And the Castle Lodge, Dover Road, St Helens, due up on the 12th of January 2018. And now this week's In Touch. Careers in broadcasting. Lucy Edwards is a highly successful vlogger and is currently training to become a broadcast journalist for the BBC. Sean Dilley is a reporter and programme maker who has worked for a range of broadcasters, including the BBC. The two compare notes on their different media and share their experiences. Producer Cheryl Gabriel, presenter Peter Wight.
The Isle of Wight County Press news for Friday 24th of November. Two headlines, one is Lives at Risk and the other is Freedom Honour for Spitfire Mary. 2 island fire stations could be closed and the number of firefighters slashed by a third following a sweeping review of services. Firefighters have slammed the proposals leaked to the county press as wholly unacceptable and warned they would put the lives of the public and firefighters at risk. When the review was announced earlier this year, Isle of Wight Council bosses said the aim was to improve services rather than cut costs. But one firefighter told the county press they sold the review to us saying it was not about finances, it was about providing a better service for the island. But now we're being told we have to save £1.1 million on top of all the other cuts we've had to make. Morale is at an all-time low, there's no trust. Everyone thinks it's going to be imposed whatever we say, and it's targeting frontline jobs. There's no mention of reducing senior managers. I'm considering my career. That's how strongly I feel. I don't want to have a fire service that's unsafe, that's based on saving money rather than firefighting. We're failing the public with this. Staff have been presented with 3 possible options for the future of the Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Services, one of which includes reducing the number of full-time firefighters from 58 to 48, reducing the number of retained firefighters and closing Bembridge and Yarmouth stations. Its proposed retained firefighters would attend incidents island-wide regardless of where they were based. Rope and water rescues would be outsourced to the Coast Guard and income generation strategies developed. The proposals have been drawn up based on minimal operational requirements, that the service should be able to handle 2 incidents, a large fire and serious traffic crash simultaneously. Crews could be cut from 5 to 4, which the CP source said would put firefighters at risk. Unless you have a crew of 5, you're not supposed to enter a property unless you know where the casualty is. But if you're waiting 6 minutes for backup, at least, the chances for that casualty are nil. So firefighters will go in anyway, he said. The Yarmouth closure wouldn't be too bad, and Bembridge doesn't get a lot of calls, but they have an airfield and a harbour. The problem is these proposals are modelled on historic demand. They aren't robust enough when it comes to risk. After Grenfell, everyone agreed fire services should be modelled on risk. Isle of Wight Fire Brigade Union Chair Peter Moorhood said, "The feeling among members is this isn't based on reducing risk, it's based on saving money. The fire service has already faced considerable cuts to both staffing levels and budget cuts. Any further cuts to the service, especially those that propose a reduction of 1/3 of frontline firefighters across the island, would put residents' and visitors' lives at significant risk and would therefore be wholly unacceptable. We are, however, always willing to consult with the Council and senior management on any proposals that seek to reduce risk and improve the quality of service." Fire Service Local Senior Officer Howard Watts stressed that the proposals were just that, proposals. While there will be changes to service delivery in the future, the safety of the public and our firefighters remains our absolute priority. The aim of this review will be to focus our resources in the areas of greatest risk and deliver the best value services to the public.
Heroic Isle of Wight Spitfire pilot Mary Ellis, the last surviving member of the Second World War's Air Transport Auxiliary, is set to be nominated for Freedom of the Isle of Wight. Mary, now 100, delivered more than 1,000 aircraft to frontline units during the Second World War and is in line to be nominated for the honour by the Isle of Wight Council. If granted, she will join an elite band of freemen, including film director Anthony Minghella, solo yachtswoman Dame Ellen McCarthy and Hover Travel founder Chris Bland. Mary flew aeroplanes such as the Spitfire and Wellington bomber to squadrons all over the country. Mary is rightly called the Spitfire Girl for the amazing work she did to help the RAF go into battle more than 70 years ago, and in my view the freedom is a long overdue and absolutely fitting honour the council should be giving to her without delay, said council leader Councillor Dave Stewart. She made the island her home after the war, and she successfully ran Sandown Airport for many years. So this honour is for a resident who helped save our country and who has given so much to our island for decades. Any decision to bestow the freedom must be taken by the full council and requires an extraordinary meeting, which could happen in January. There needs to be a 2/3 majority of the council, but I'm sure such an award for such an amazing woman will have widespread appeal, Councillor Stewart added. Mary's goddaughter, Adult Services Cabinet member Councillor Claire Mosdale, said, "Mary is a remarkable but modest woman who loves this island and would accept such a wonderful honour but be embarrassed over all the fuss. She's the last link to female pilots who did vital work in the fight against the Nazis and also against perceptions of what women could do." Despite the danger and the attitudes of the time, Mary and her comrades came out triumphant in both. "It is a privilege she is my godmother, and I hope the freedom can be granted."
Other news from the paper now. Islanders are encouraged to make the most of Black Friday and Cyber Monday, and all for a good cause. The Isle of Wight Christmas Toy Appeal is aiming to collect more than 2,000 toys, which will be distributed across the island to children in need, and with Black Friday and then Cyber Monday, retailers have a host of deals. Isle of Wight Christmas Toy Appeal organiser Deborah Rook encouraged residents to make the most of these deals and stock up in aid of the toy appeal. There are some really good deals, particularly on Cyber Monday, with technology that would be great for some of our older children, she said. Deborah said, "The toy appeal is a bit of a slow burn at first. People don't always want to think about Christmas in November. However, as the toy appeal only runs until December 14th, we really want to encourage everyone to get involved. Islanders can do all sorts of things to get involved. They can have a silly jumper day to raise money, or instead of doing Secret Santa, donate to the toy appeal, or even a festive coffee morning. The appeal is looking for new and unwrapped gifts with a suggested value of £10 plus. You can drop toys off at Newport, Isle of Wight County Press, Morrison's, the Entertainer Toy Shop, Mothercare, Argos, Asda and Isle of Wight Radio, Lake Morrison's, Shanklin Toymaster, Ride, Tesco Toymaster and Ride School, and Freshwater, West Wight Sports Centre.
Exciting plans to breathe life back into one of Sandown's key seafront areas has been unveiled. The proposals at Sandown Gardens include a dinosaur-themed adventure crazy golf course and a high ropes sky trail. Other key features of the revamped attraction will include a beachside broadwalk linking the area to the beach and a helter-skelter or carousel. However, the existing skateboard park and five-a-side football pitch would be retained by Sandown Town Council for public use. As previously reported, Heritage Great Britain, which owns Sandown Mountain Railway, the Land's End attraction and the Needles Landmark attraction, has agreed a 50-year lease for the site with Sandown Town Council. A public consultation on the future of the site was launched on Tuesday. The Isle of Wight Council's Cabinet Member for Regeneration, Councillor Wayne Whittle, praised the enterprising actions of town councillors for the new deal for the area. He said this site costs £36,000 a year for Sandown to maintain, but as soon as the transfer to the partnership is complete, the commercial site will pay for it. Sandown will earn money from it. All we did as the Cabinet was to amend the lease. He added, "I take my hat off to Sandown Town Council. They've stepped up to the plate. What we as a Cabinet intend to do is to create 3 or 4 more good reasons to go to Sandown in summer and winter. If we can do that, we can kickstart the whole regeneration of Sandown."
She inspired so many, and now Sophie Rolfe will have a lasting legacy. It will be 4 years tomorrow, that's Saturday, since the 6-year-old of Totland lost her brave battle with a brain tumour. To mark the anniversary, her parents, Aaron Rolfe and Gemma Brammeyer, have revealed plans to open a £1.5 million bespoke children's hospice. The plans, the latest development between Kissy Puppy, the Sophie Trust and Earl Mountbatten Hospice, involve refurbishing Oak House, a disused building on the hospice site in Newport. It will offer children's respite day services, relaxation and therapy rooms, areas for socialising, plus new initiatives for older patients. Aaron and Gemma said, "Of all the months, November is undoubtedly the toughest. In the 4 years since we lost Sophie, we've always tried to put a positive spin on November, and this new project continues that trend. To think the island is finally going to have a building to house these services is testament to how far we've come, which in turn reflects the level of kindness, support and generosity of our community. As a family who've been through the toughest of times, we know just how important it is to have these services in place. To have a dedicated area where these services can overlap seamlessly is a fitting conclusion from where we started. Sophie's wish to help other children as they helped her is something we're thrilled to be able to continue. A play area and dedicated rooms for dying children have already been installed at the hospice as a result of its partnership with Kissy Puppy. Hospice Chief Executive Nigel Hartley said, "This new development will mean we have more space to offer day respite to children and their families in the years and months leading up to the end of their life, providing them with a space to be with other children and young people in as normal, joyful and sociable an environment as possible. It's hoped the refurbishment will start next year and will take 2 years. A Christmas shop will be opening at Sophie's and Earl Mountbatten Hospice's Lugley Street store, Newport, tomorrow at 9:30 a.m.
A stroke patient said she had been written off by the NHS after she was refused physiotherapy and left to trawl the internet for do-it-yourself treatment. Believed to be Britain's oldest foster mother when she retired last year, Hazel Wild, 81, was told she had not responded well enough to physiotherapy while she recovered at St Mary's Hospital, and further treatment would not be provided when she was discharged to Seven Gables Care Home in Totland. Describing herself as a fighter, Hazel researched suitable exercises online and started practising on her own. Although she remains in a wheelchair, she can now move her left arm and lift her left leg. She had lost mobility in both following the stroke almost 8 weeks ago, but recovered her cognitive and speech abilities almost immediately. In a letter to Seven Gables, where Hazel said the care was excellent, senior clinical staff at St Mary's said, while an inpatient for 1 month, Hazel was seen for daily therapy and was assessed and treated by several senior physio and occupational therapists. Having tried consistently, we were unable to progress Hazel's mobility. Based on clinical reasoning, ongoing therapy is not appropriate. But Hazel, who has fostered more than 150 children and brought up 6 of her own, said, "I was brought up in the Blitz. I'm a fighter. I knew I wouldn't make any improvement if I didn't do anything, so I found some exercises online. I've improved a lot, but how much more would I have improved if I'd had proper physio? I was in a pretty poor state in the hospital. I was trying my absolute hardest to move my leg and they kept saying, 'You're not doing it,' but I literally couldn't. The implication was I hadn't tried hard enough. I know how strapped the NHS is for funding, but they just wrote me off at such an early stage." The NHS Trust declined to respond. A spokesperson would only say the provision of physiotherapy is subject to clinical assessments by trained professionals. Stroke patients discharged from hospital to a care home are reviewed at 6 weeks to check whether further services are required. If a patient's condition has significantly changed, they can be referred into the physiotherapy service. Although she is determined to walk again, Hazel said she could not return to her freshwater cottage as it was not wheelchair friendly. She's looking for a bungalow so her daughter, Jackie, 51, who has learning disabilities and was cared for at home by Hazel before the stroke, can stay at weekends. Her son, David Holmes, said it was totally unacceptable and plans to lodge a formal complaint with the Isle of Wight NHS Trust.
2 articles now on this week's budget in the UK. Education unions have slammed the government for failing to increase school funding in this week's budget. They've warned all 47 island schools are facing cuts totalling £3.9 million by 2020. Chancellor Philip Hammond announced on Wednesday there would be extra cash for maths and computer science, plus a £40 million teacher training fund for underperforming schools, but no increase in school budgets. The move was branded deeply disappointing by the National Education Union. Local Joint Secretary Peter Shreve said the government had a big political choice to make in the budget to invest in education or continue with its damaging policy of real terms cuts. It's chosen to ignore the anger of parents and the clear evidence of the problems being created by real terms cuts to education. Despite the worsening teacher recruitment and retention crisis and the huge real terms cuts in teacher pay, the Chancellor had nothing to offer teachers. With all 47 island schools facing real terms cuts per pupil, the government is telling parents their children deserve less than was spent on children in previous years. Island MP Bob Seeley has welcomed the budget, but Isle of Wight Green Party leader and National Education spokesman Vix Lowthian added her voice to those criticising the lack of school funding. Claiming Mr Seeley was out of touch, she said, the budget says nothing about further investment in renewable energy and, most importantly for the island, nothing about solar or tidal power. Additional tax breaks are given for oil and gas exploration when there are licences granted at Arreton and Compton to drill for oil. Island Labour Party parliamentary spokesman Julian Critchley said it was an empty budget from a shambolic government and yet another missed opportunity to address the problems facing the island and the country. The budget at a glance, stamp duty abolished for first-time buyers, £44 billion for £300,000 new homes, 300,000 new homes, 100% council tax levied on empty properties, duty on beer, wine, spirits and most ciders frozen, tax for diesel cars to rise, national living wage to rise from £7.50 to £7.83 per hour, universal credit waiting times reduced, £540 million for electric cars, £2.8 billion for the NHS and £10 billion for capital investment fund for hospitals.
Controversial proposals to build 10 new caravan bases at Rookley Country Park have been lodged with planning bosses. However, the scheme has further angered residents and caravan owners at the site, already seething over plans by new owners, Southern Parks Limited, to redevelop the whole site. As previously reported, the proposals mean current caravan owners are being asked to leave to make room for the planned redevelopment. It is acknowledged by the caravan owners the new owners are not doing anything illegal. Rookley Country Park has previously stated some areas of the park require a significant amount of work to ensure a safe location for people to stay. Caravan owners have vowed to make their voices heard when the latest plans come before the Isle of Wight Council's Planning Committee. Already 43 letters of objection to the latest plans have been lodged. Speaking on behalf of owners, Paul St John Martin said, regarding this scheme, the former owners had a planning application agreed in 2015. The significant difference about this one is they are applying to destroy trees, and they've also applied to put a drive in around the pond. We're also concerned the plans will increase the amount of sewage. He added this latest application is a separate issue, but all those who are affected are furious and are furious they can be kicked off. In a previous statement, Rookley Country Park said, unfortunately, the extent of the work required is such some owners will have to move their holiday homes elsewhere in accordance with the contracts they have agreed. We sincerely apologise for any upheaval this situation may have created for some owners of holiday caravans having to move to other parks.
A 96-year-old war hero has lost his independence after his mobility scooter was stolen. Arthur Wade went out to charge his scooter last Wednesday, only to discover it had been taken from outside his flat. The retired army veteran, who was born and married in East Cowes, manned the East Cowes searchlight during the Cowes Blitz. There were 11 people on shift that night, but only 4 alive by the time it finished. He worked at Ryde Hospital and has lived in his flat on George Street, Ryde, for more than 30 years. His daughter Linda Hodgson said her father used the scooter to go out on his own, using the basket on the front for shopping and to visit the seaside in the summer. She said, he can't go out without the scooter unless we take him. They've totally taken away his independence. He didn't use it every day, but he used it when no one was available to take him out. He feels so angry about it, but he's resigned himself to it being gone. Arthur, who has 20 grandchildren and more than 20 great-grandchildren, was a key holder at his local Baptist church until a few years ago. He is still able to walk to church, but circulation problems mean he can only walk short distances and needs to be accompanied at all times. Police confirmed the maroon-coloured scooter with haverstock in the rear of the seat and supplied by the Royal British Legion was taken between noon on November 14th and 5 p.m. on November 15th. Call police on 101, quoting 44170444 if you have any information.
An East Cowes man with an horrendous record was jailed for 32 weeks by Island magistrates after he stole his sister's charm bracelet. Gareth Stafford, 38 of York Avenue, admitted theft when he appeared before the bench on Monday. The court was told Stafford had visited his sister's home in Ventnor on July the 26th when a hairdresser arrived to cut his sister's hair. His sister took her necklace off but later discovered it was missing, although Stafford denied he had taken it. Her charm bracelet of great sentimental value was also missing, and Stafford later admitted he had taken it. His sister later found it in a jeweller's shop for sale at £100. Stafford had an horrendous record, particularly offences of theft, the court heard. He was in breach of a suspended sentence given at Avon and Somerset Magistrates Court on June the 8th. The sentence had been suspended for 2 years, putting him in breach of its terms, said Anne Smelt, prosecuting. For Stafford, Barry Arnott said his client had been in a bad place emotionally. Stafford was jailed for a total of 32 weeks for the old and new offences. No order for costs was made.
Dippie the penguin was all of a flap when he was reunited with his feathered friends earlier this week. The 10 penguins from the former Seaview wildlife encounter were transferred to Norfolk after the attraction closed in 2015. However, the group was split and 7 joined Great Yarmouth Sea Life Centre and 3 went to live at the Sandown Centre. Dippie, who has arthritis, was sent to Great Yarmouth because the enclosure has a ramp which makes it easier for him to get in and out of the pool. On Monday morning, the penguins were reunited after the Sandown attraction reopened following refurbishment. Marketing assistant Maxine Cullerton said, "The birds definitely recognised each other. They make bonds for life, so they will remember each other from Seaview. There was lots of honking and flapping, and Dippie was quite vocal."
The Lord Louis Library has opened its toilet to the public while the South Street public toilet saga continues. Newport Parish Council is due to meet the Isle of Wight Council to discuss opening the facilities again soon. As previously reported, the Parish Council also has a special arrangement with McDonald's to allow the public to use the restaurant's toilets on a trial basis at a cost to the council of £100 per week. A Lord Louis Library employee said the toilet is sited just inside the front entrance to the library and can be accessed by radar key. If you do not have a radar key, ask at the library help desk. Staff will be happy to open the toilet for you. While this temporary arrangement is in place, the library toilet will have an additional daily clean, courtesy of cleaners contracted by the Parish Council. Meanwhile, one last attempt to find a solution with the Isle of Wight Council over the closed South Street toilets has been agreed by parish councillors who compared the talks to the ongoing Brexit negotiations. The toilets near the bus station were closed over the summer due to drainage problems. Councillor Steve Hastings, "We have dilly-dallied for too long. We want to resolve this, and we have heard the Isle of Wight Council wants to resolve this as well. So I think we should go into these talks with an open mind and some ideas of solutions. It's a bit like the negotiations on the EU. Both parties want it, there will be a deal, but we can't put a time to it." Councillor Matthew Price agreed to speak to Isle of Wight Councillor Stuart Hutchinson to arrange a meeting.
A fresh appeal has been made to Cowes businesses to provide post office services. Island MP Bob Seeley said he'd lobbied the post office and expected to see services return to the town centre. Services have been based at the Mill Hill Road Co-op since they moved out of town earlier this year. There used to be a counter at the Co-op at the top of Terminus Road until it was taken over by Marks and Spencer. Mr Seeley said he'd spoken to post office representatives who said they were keen to hear from town centre shops and other businesses willing to offer services. This is most welcome news for Cowes and comes on the back of another announcement from the post office. It will open a branch in East Cowes too, he said. "I'm pleased I was able to successfully lobby on behalf of residents and businesses to persuade the post office to look again at its decision about services in the town. Having such an important facility back in the centre is potentially a big boost for retailers and for local people, and I look forward to seeing a business come forward to take on the job. He said problems caused by the lack of services had been exacerbated by bank closures. The East Cowes Post Office is due to open at the Central Convenience Stores at Osborne Garage, York Avenue on January 26th.
An Island Sixth Form college is back on the agenda, but probably not on a single site. Talks are continuing between the Island Sixth Form providers to produce a collaborative college, said Isle of Wight Council Cabinet Member for Children's Services, Councillor Paul Brading. Under present rules, the Isle of Wight Council has no powers to control the number of places on the island, and there is concern there are too many for good A-level results and comprehensive subject choice. Getting academies and colleges to work together will be difficult, but we are a long way down the line. It is something we have to achieve for the good of the island, Councillor Brading told last week's full council meeting. Small sixth forms are not viable in terms of numbers and education. I'm sure sixth form results are nowhere near where they need to be. It is sad the old administration didn't follow through the 2015 recommendations. After wide consultation, a drastic reduction in sixth form places was recommended in 2015, but councillors stepped back from closing a college, a decision which contributed to over-provision. Now Sandown Bay Academy sixth form has just 39 students, and it is set to be axed when the current students finish their courses. Among them is the 18-year-old son of Councillor Tig Outlaw. Councillor Outlaw told last week's council meeting his son was among students taking one subject at Sandown, one at Ryde and one in his own time at home. New leader of the Island Independents, Councillor Ian Stevens, had put forward a motion urging continuing support for sixth forms. A key step is to ensure sixth form providers reduce in number, so those which do exist can be of sufficient size to provide students with the resources and education they need, said Councillor Stevens.
Are you concerned about hate crime, antisocial behaviour or domestic abuse? Representatives from the Isle of Wight Community Safety Partnership, CSP, which includes the Isle of Wight Council, Police and Health Services, will be answering questions at the Riverside Centre, Newport, at 2 p.m. on Thursday. The public meeting follows the publication of the CSP's annual report, which revealed huge rises in violent crime, domestic violence, burglary and serious sexual offences. The agenda will include a progress report on the CSP's efforts to reduce crime and disorder, a profile on serious organised crime and a report on tackling substance misuse.
Is this the island's oldest resident? Gwen Allen celebrated her 106th birthday on November the 9th at Inverhouse Care Home, Bembridge. Born in Kent, Gwen moved to the island from Farnborough in 1952 after serving with the Wrens. She worked as a clerk at Saunders Row East Cowes and lived in her Cowes home until she was in her late 90s. Activities coordinator Karen Wheeler said Gwen had a lovely day and spent her birthday quietly with her nephew. She enjoyed a beautiful cake made by Rachel Solero and Rob Jolliffe from Inverhouse. She was presented with a card from the Queen, flowers and gifts.
From St Mary's Neonatal Intensive Care Unit to the catwalks of London Fashion Week and New York City, 7-year-old Sophie Crombie has come a long way. She weighed just 2 pounds 5 ounces when she was born, and Sophie's mother Rachel said she's lucky to be alive. She's lucky she had no lasting damage and is very lucky to be doing what she's doing, said Rachel. Sophie of Drabbles Lane, Sandown, will be strutting her stuff on the catwalk at London Fashion Week in February for the House of Icons, wearing outfits by children's clothes designer Debbie Holden of Camellia Couture. Sophie, who lives with her mother, Dad Peter and brother Matthew, began modelling at a pageant run in aid of Angel Gowns for UK Angel Babies, a volunteer organisation which transforms wedding and christening gowns into outfits for angel babies. Rachel said, Sophie was crowned Miss Inspirational 2017-18 due to her determination, zest for life, but for always having a smile on her face, even when struggling with the hypermobility of her joints. The Year 3 pupil from Broadley Primary School has also been asked to model at both Milan and New York Fashion Weeks on behalf of Camellia Couture and other designers. The pageants are entirely self-funded. Her family will have to pay transportation costs, and Sophie's not paid for her work. Although she had to turn down appearances at Milan Fashion Week because of school, Rachel is hopeful they'll be able to attend the New York show next year. She said Sophie loves modelling and thoroughly enjoys the experience of being pampered and being able to wear extravagant gowns and designer clothes. Sophie also dances with Isle of Wight School, Dance Vibes and Starlight Boutique, as well as attending Isle of Wight Theatre Train every Saturday morning. Rachel said she's a very busy girl, but she loves being the centre of attention. The team at NICU St Mary's Hospital acted fast, for which we will be eternally grateful. From then on, we knew she was a little fighter, and since then hasn't let anything stop her. We support her completely in all she wants to do, now and in the future, and will never stop her reaching for the stars.
Amazon World has announced the arrival of the first flamingo chick born at the zoo since it opened in 1990. The zoo announced online yesterday, that's Thursday, a greater flamingo hatched earlier in the year. When the egg was laid, none of the flamingos took any interest, so it was moved to an artificial incubator. 28 days later, the egg hatched, with the chick weighing in at 85 grams. Over the next few weeks, senior keepers took turns feeding the chick every few hours. The chick has now moved into a larger off-show area and is 3 foot tall and weighs 2 kilograms. The team said the chick won't move on show until after the winter, when it will be introduced to our group, but will continue to grow and develop under the close watch of its dedicated keepers. In the next few weeks, we will find out whether it is a boy or a girl via DNA feather sexing. We will let you all know the results.
A Brading resident has again been told he can't film a town council meeting. Chris Offer, who clashed with councillors at their last meeting, has been told he'll not be able to take his camera into Brading Primary School on December 7th. The school is being used by the council because the date clashes with the WI booking of the town hall where meetings are usually held. It was at the last meeting councillors threatened to call the police after Mr. Offer insisted on filming from the front row, where he said he needed to be because he was hard of hearing. This time Town Clerk Linda Allen told him she'd sought permission from the school for Mr. Offer to film, but had been told he wouldn't be allowed to. He said he'd lodged a complaint with the Isle of Wight Council about the breach of the right to film, which was enshrined in the Openness of Local Government Bodies Regulations 2014.
Morris Spartan's contribution to East Cowes has been commemorated with the opening of a new multi-use games area, Muga, bearing his name. The former leader of the Isle of Wight Council and long-serving East Cowes Town Councillor was awarded an OBE for public service, including campaigning for improved facilities in the town. After his death last year, the Town Council decided its new Muga should be named in Councillor Barton's honour. Off Fectis Road, on part of Victoria Rec, it incorporates a hard surface for ball games and an outdoor gym. There is already a state park on the site and a children's play area and community centre nearby, where the Town Council organises a youth club once a week. The Muga was mainly funded by contributions from developers as part of planning permissions. Mayor Peter Lloyd said councillors Jane Rann and Margaret Webster and our facilities officer Mick Collis played a valuable part in getting this off the ground with the Isle of Wight Council, after ward councillor Julia Baker-Smith promised to look into it. In its first few days it has already proved popular. Councillor Barton's widow Marcia performed the opening ceremony.
A glitter ban has been introduced at an island nursery to encourage children to care for the environment. Tops Day Nurseries, which has 19 nurseries across the south and southwest, including one at the Isle of Wight College site, hit the national headlines after banning glitter due to its environmental impact. It follows a government announcement: products containing microbeads, small beads of plastic found in cosmetic products such as toothpaste and facial scrubs, would be banned. The nursery is seeking an environmentally friendly alternative, such as mineral glitter used by cosmetics company Lush. The nursery chain has also banned single-use plastic items, including straws, balloons, cups and plates.
Celebrity gardener Alan Titchmarsh did the honours at Cowes Christmas Lights Switch On. Families gathered outside Sainsbury's in the High Street at 5 p.m. on Saturday, ready for the big event. The festive lights stretch from Birmingham Road to the parade. Cowes Town Council said we had a fantastic turnout for the switching on of the town's festive lights on Saturday. We'd like to say a huge thank you to Alan Titchmarsh for being our special guest and to everyone who attended.
A 15-year-old boy has been arrested after a teenager was allegedly assaulted. Police arrested the boy on suspicion of grievous bodily harm without intent following an incident in Newport on November the 2nd. The victim was reportedly assaulted by a teenager in St James's Street between 9:15 p.m. and 9:45 p.m. The 15-year-old was released without charge but remains under investigation.
Burglar Reece Chilcott broke into a Sandown tattoo parlour and stole around £6,000 worth of equipment, a court was told. Chilcott, 26, of Fort Street, Sandown, broke into the premises at College Close, as well as 3 cars parked outside, in May. He used brake components from inside one of the vehicles to smash a door to a car sales department, then went upstairs to the tattoo parlour on the first floor. He admitted 2 charges of burglary when he appeared for sentence at the Isle of Wight Crown Court on November the 10th. Among the items taken were tattoo guns and an iPod. When police went to his home address, they spoke to a woman Chilcott had offered a tattoo gun to. They searched his room and found other items of tattooing equipment, while CCTV footage also tied Chilcott to the burglary. Some items were recovered, but in a statement the tattoo parlour's owner said he had been heartbroken by the break-in, as some items had been bought with money he had been left by his grandmother. For Chilcott, Russell Pine said the matter had been hanging over his client's head. It had also been made the subject of a 32-week suspended sentence for theft in July, but the earlier offences had not been dealt with at that time. Chilcott was sentenced to 4 months in jail, suspended for 2 years. He was also ordered to pay a victim charge.
The assistant coroner plans to visit St Mary's after an inquest into the death of a baby who suffered breathing problems. Owen Woodlake, son of Michelle and Richard of Grange Road, East Cowes, was 1 day old when he died after struggling to breathe. The baby was taken off the island in the middle of the night, but it was too late, and he died shortly after arriving at Southampton General Hospital. This was the second inquest in 3 weeks, scrutinising the care of babies at St Mary's Hospital. Owen died from an acute intraventricular hemorrhage, bleeding into the sacs of fluid into the brain, most likely caused by persistent pulmonary hypertension of the newborn, PPHN, and meconium aspiration. Assistant Coroner Sarah Laurie Whitby said in her record of inquest at Winchester Coroner's Court, Owen Woodlake was born full-term and healthy, but had aspirated meconium. He was placed in ambient oxygen and continued to need oxygen at ever-increasing levels. The failure of his respiratory function was recognised in part, though the severity was not. Transfer to a tertiary specialist neonatal unit was not sought early enough, particularly considering the geographical location at St Mary's. He was diagnosed at a late stage with PPHN, and as this was untreated, it couldn't be resolved. In her conclusion, she said, Owen Woodlake died of natural causes as a result of undiagnosed PPHN. It's not possible to say on the balance of probabilities whether Owen would have survived if his significant respiratory distress had been recognised, investigated and treated at the time. Mrs Whitby said she hoped to visit St Mary's soon, but had not yet set a date for the visit.
A year of 2 halves for island tourism saw visitor numbers increase earlier in the season, only to fall during the last 3 months. Speaking exclusively to the county press before the latest figures are published, Visit Isle of Wight boss David Thornton said the number of tourists between July the 1st and September the 30th fell by 42,000 compared with last year. He said until the end of June it was looking good, but we lost Festival, which previously attracted maybe 20,000 people. Then it started raining and didn't really stop. Visitor numbers between April 1st and June 30th increased by 10%, and their spend by 4%. Those 730,874 tourists spent £95.2 million, and 20% were first-time visitors. The news follows hot on the heels of a tourism survey carried out among business owners by Kevin Daniels, an estate agent who also runs rival tourism website isleofwight.com. 58 responders said business was up during the year, but 69 said it was down, which Mr Daniels described as catastrophic. Most said ferry costs were the main reason more tourists did not visit, and 103 said they'd lost bookings, particularly those made via booking engines, after people found out how expensive they were. The vast majority disagreed with spending white bid money on promoting festivals and the Victorian Abdul Osborne House connection. Mr Daniels said people can be more honest when they are anonymous. I think this survey is more accurate than the Visit Isle of Wight statistics. You don't have to be clever to go along the seafront and see there are no cars. Mr Thornton declined to argue over statistics, but said Visit IW published the actual number of ferry passengers.
So that concludes the first part of your talking newspaper for today. It's goodbye, best wishes from Howard.
And from Pauline.
Hello, it's good morning from Paul.
And hello from Sarah.
We're going to start with Letter of the Week by Marlin Baker, Assistant Leader, 1st Northwest Rainbows. I was sad to see our Rainbow unit were not mentioned in your editorial coverage of Remembrance Sunday. Jessica Smith and myself rescued the 1st Northwood Rainbow unit from closing in September. We are now at Gurnard's Scout Hut, and therefore we joined in all the other groups in the parade on that Sunday afternoon. The Rainbows walked and carried their flag with pride. We all attended Gurnard Church service where the Reverend Amanda Collinson welcomed the girls and stated it was the first time Rainbows had attended the church. Our Rainbows enjoyed their experience.
Here's a letter from Angela Hewitt from the organisation Against a Fixed Link group in Whippingham. I would like to congratulate Kathy Folks for coming up with such an amazing and an extraordinary idea for a fixed rail link to the Isle of Wight. But relax everyone, she's having a laugh. For this to work, the residents of Fratton would have to become refugees as the town is demolished to make room for the big tunnel dig and the removal of the spoil. Or the spoil could be piled up to create a mountain for migrant birds to land on. How deep down under the Solent would the tunnel have to go? If it's coming up to Ryde Arena, we're looking at a U-bend. Not sure trains can cope with that. But then someone could invent a caterpillar train. Hang on, I think I may have seen one at Thorpe Park or some other adventure playground. Of course, Ryde will also be demolished to allow for the big dig. There would be more chance of getting a chain-link train across the Solent. Or even better, how about a boat? Perhaps the county press could run a competition for who could come up with the silliest idea. There's nothing like a bit of fun to cheer up our winter nights. Well, there's another letter here from Sam Turner of Sandown, and the headline is Rail Link Workable. And his comments are, reading the proposals of Carl Feeney's Able Connections Limited for a transport hub to include the Isle of Wight Steam Railway, I feel he may be hinting at something else. The island does not have the infrastructure or roads to cope with and sustain high roll-on road traffic from the mainland, and never will. But a rail tunnel might just be workable, certainly if it connects with the railway. Concluding, therefore, if there were ever to be a fixed link from the mainland, then the only consideration should be a rail tunnel link. I don't want any form of fixed link, but I'd like to thank Mr. Feeney for putting rail into the equation.
There's a letter from Susan Powell, East Cowes. I was alarmed to see in the county press the 17th of November the plane tree opposite the Sloop Inn by the entrance to Lakeside is going to be cut down. I wonder if anybody else had any information as to whether the tree was diseased or likely to fall down on top of the traffic. The response on social media to my message was overwhelming. It's only a tree, some said. What I and others want to know is it really necessary to remove such a venerable member of the community with a lifespan already thought to be 200 years? It looks healthy, it bears fruit, the bark seems in good condition. I've been told the problem is with an injury sustained when it was hit by a lorry. I assume it has been looked at by a tree surgeon. If so, what is the prognosis? In the space of my own time on this planet, I have seen the fields and paddocks of my childhood disappear beneath housing estates, trees and hedgerows gone, ponds filled in, all in the march of so-called progress.
Here is a letter from Adam Webb of Ryde. In March this year, I had major surgery. The NHS looked after me very well, But being a light sleeper, I found sleeping on the ward difficult due to noise. So for minor follow-up surgery scheduled for December, I was thinking of treating myself to a couple of nights in the Motterston suite. Posters for this are all over the walls of St Mary's. What they don't say is that having an operation on the NHS and booking a private room in which to recuperate is not something the Motterston offer. They used to, apparently, but now booking very expensive private surgery is a requirement. What this says in not too many words is, if you have wealth, you're welcome, but NHS scruffs won't get past the doormat.
There's a letter from Terry Hack at Bryston, The Silent Revolution. How right Sam Turner was to outline the dangers of totally silent all-electric cars in the county press of 3rd of November. I own such a car, and at this stage the responsibility for the safety of pedestrians lies totally and unequivocally with us drivers. The need to realise that hitherto people were aware of vehicles purely by the sound of the engine, remove that and there are serious dangers. However, as the numbers of electric cars increase, pedestrians will have to train themselves to be more aware, although again the main onus must remain largely with the drivers, particularly where older people and children are concerned. There are those people who think electric cars will never catch on, so why bother? They need to know that in 2011 there were just 40 such vehicles. In 2015 there were 40,000. At this present time the number has topped 100,000. So pedestrians will need to adjust their ideas very quickly indeed. In addition, Volvo has announced that by the end of 2019 every one of their new models will only have electric or hybrid engines. Also, the new registration figures for electric vehicles has risen by 2,600% in the last 4 years. So very soon indeed electric vehicles will be everywhere. What will help both parties is knowing an unusual trait in pedestrians. It would make more sense for the pedestrians faced in oncoming traffic to walk on the outside of the footpath, so that when they have to step off the curb to let oncoming pedestrians pass, they can see oncoming traffic and act accordingly. Pedestrians going the same way as the traffic remain close to the wall and safe. But they don't. On most occasions the reverse happens, in that pedestrians going the same way as the traffic walk along the outer edge, and hearing nothing coming up behind, they simply step off the curb without warning. Therefore it is totally beholden when drivers are coming in to park, for example, that their speed is less than the pedestrians at all times.
A letter from Willoughby Matthews, Youth and Student Officer, Island Labour in Cowes. I have read that Flick Drummond has left the role of Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner for Hampshire, having only been confirmed in the role 19 days earlier. She was appointed by the new Conservative Commissioner, Michael Lane, with no public advertisement of the role and therefore no competition, just months after the voters of Portsmouth South booted her out as their MP. This all comes months after Mr. Lane's own election, when he decided to axe the role of Assistant Commissioner, presumably deeming it not necessary, only to give virtually the same job to one of his Tory friends just a few weeks later. Shouldn't he make his mind up? This just shows the whole programme is a waste of time and public money, especially at a time when our police services have been slashed to the bone by this heartless Tory government.
There's a letter from Dean Francis at East Cowes. Reassurance, no substitute for resources. When responding to an increase in recorded crime, Superintendent Jackson, in the county press of 17th of November, tried to balance reassurance and reality. It is worth bearing in mind that police time is largely spent on activities that are not crime. These other duties are varied and the police are obliged to address them. The Chief Constable for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight is clear. As well as finding £80 million of efficiency savings since 2010, her force is £45 million a year under funding compared to the national average for other forces. Some facts bring these funding issues sharply into focus. Hampshire Constabulary has a workforce of 2.6 per 1,000 population, compared with 3.6 per 1,000 as national average. The more local picture is that the 5 forces which border Hampshire have an average of 3.1 per 1,000. Hampshire Constabulary as a whole has endured staff cuts of 23% against a national average of 15% since 2010. The public deserves to know why Hampshire Constabulary is at the back of the funding queue, and specifically why the Isle of Wight has taken more than its fair share of the pain. Why, with staff reductions across the force such as these, has the Isle of Wight District Command had its staff reduced by 41%? The island's police shrank by 25% to 190 staff between 2010 and 2015, and by a further 21% from 190 to 150 staff between 2015 and 2017. Why has the Isle of Wight seen not just a reduction but the wholesale removal of its roads policing specialists with their vehicles and equipment to the mainland? There is no longer even a single office stationed here whose daily work and specialist training is focused on policing our roads. Why is the Hampshire Constabulary workforce 2.6 1,000 of the force population, but only 1.1% per 1,000 of the population on the island? That's 58% less police resources here per 1,000 population than the average across the force, a disparity which in scale seems to be wildly excessive. I promised to padlock my shed. Can Hampshire Constabulary promise to resource my local police fairly?
The last letter is from Sarah Andrews of Ryde, and the headline, Very Unfair on Teenagers. 2 weeks ago, I travelled with my 16-year-old daughter to Southampton and was refused a youth ticket for her as she did not have any ID. I explained she was a student and was told by a Red Funnel member of staff that anyone can be a student. So there was no misunderstanding. I explained further she was a sixth form student and was told on the Red Funnel website it states a youth needs ID to prove age. Now, as I've used Red Funnel many times, I have no need to go on the website for a simple day trip as a timetable comes through the post. My daughter showed her uni day photo on her phone and has the school she attends and the date her sixth form course finishes, but this was not accepted as it had no birth date. I'm sure the member of staff was doing the job to the best of their ability, but I do think a bit of common sense could have prevailed on this occasion, as the customer service was rather lacking. I travelled with my daughter 6 months ago when she was 15, was never asked for ID for her, but somehow since then she's aged 5 years according to Red Funnel, has to travel as a 20-year-old. Needless to say, my daughter was upset by the whole affair, and it ruined what should have been a relaxing day out. I have emailed Red Funnel and received no reply. That's great customer service.
We're now moving on to looking back. 100 years ago, November the 24th, 1917, the island coal crisis reached a happy settlement after protests about the high price of coal on the Isle of Wight. The shipping controller announced it was impossible to reduce freights, but a rail-borne supply of coal would be possible, and this would reduce the burden on freights between the island. The controller agreed to deliver 1,200 tonnes per week of rail-borne coal to the Isle of Wight, so the price of coal on the island would then reduce by 10 shillings per tonne. The second article, same year, a Benstead woman had a letter from her injured son in France. Mrs. Ward received news her son, Herbert, was injured after being run over by a lorry. Herbert, who sustained serious injuries to both legs, had been serving in France for more than 2 years.
75 years ago, November the 28th, 1942, news reached the island of several Isle of Wight residents who had been taken prisoner in Italy. Sergeant Major R. Lorne was taken prisoner with a group of other island men and wrote to his wife to say he was well on his way to recovery. He said it was a comfort to receive Red Cross parcels following their capture. Also the same date, the voices of Cairo were broadcast in Wootton Bridge. Among the British soldiers in an Egyptian hospital who broadcast a message home on the BBC was Private Austin Eldridge. His message to his mother was broadcast on the programme Greetings from Cairo. He sounded cheery and remarked he was making good progress and looked forward to returning to Wootton.
We move on to 50 years ago, December the 2nd, 1967. It might be cold and miserable now, but 50 years ago marked the sunniest November since records began. November 1967 had a record-breaking 100.3 hours of sunlight with a temperature of up to 13 degrees. Also, the same date, an Isle of Wight painter received recognition by the Piccadilly Art Gallery in London and was inundated with orders. It was his unusual aircraft paintings that caught the eye of the gallery's owner, and since they were featured in London, he had more than a dozen orders to fill in a month. Thomas Fishburne of Yarmouth told the county press he wasn't worried about the number of canvases he had to paint because he was enjoying painting more than ever.
This is 25 years ago, November the 27th, 1992. An 11-storey block of flats were given the go-ahead to be built on Sandown seafront, despite anger from residents. Permission was given for the 2.5 million development on the Blue Lagoon site, despite claims it would threaten the sea views in Sandown. Also the same date, the Grinch stole Christmas after young Christians were banned from singing carols in St James Square, Newport, because they were deemed to be a noise nuisance. The Isle of Wight Christian Fellowship wanted to use the square for mime, singing and drama, but the County Transportation Committee Chairman, Eric Pickford, refused to issue a permit because of previous complaints about noise when the fellowship used the square in August.
We now move to 10 years ago, November the 23rd, 2007. Chail Homes for Chail People was made a reality by the Parish Council, which brokered a groundbreaking scheme to ensure its villagers would get priority for social housing. This was aimed at ensuring a balance in the community and to ensure people were not forced out of their homes by a lack of affordable accommodation. By also this same date, it was full steam ahead following the arrival of a 100-year-old paddle steamer from Kent. The boat, Monarch, was to take up residence in Cowes, offering trips around the Medina. At just 42 foot, Monarch was the smallest commercially operated paddle steamer in the world.
Well, over to White Memories, and the headline is The Changing Face of Newport. Brian Greening looks back at Newport, which is very different from the county town of today. That Newport has changed in the past 200 years is not disputed, but it's difficult to conceive the time when beyond the boundaries of the town centre there were very few houses. In an article published in the county press in 1885, an old resident recalls the Newport he knew in 1820. If we take the points of the compass as a guide, he states, apart from oyster shell cottages in what became Medina Avenue, there were scarcely half a dozen houses on the way to Shide. The two main premises were Mount Pleasant House, home to the Kirkpatrick banking family, and Shide Farmhouse. Looking north from the bottom of Honey Hill to the barracks at Parkhurst, once again there were no more than half a dozen houses, and the situation was similar in Fairley Road, with Fairley House being the largest property in the area. We do have an excellent description of the scene looking from Carisbrook Mall towards Carisbrook Village in an article by a man called John Albin. In 1796 he described the journey he made from Carisbrook Mall and thence to Carisbrook Village and the castle. It would have been a time before any houses were there, and he tells us of the uninterrupted views that were to be seen. In the beginning, Carisbrook Mall was just 200 yards long and, as Albin states, 8 yards wide. It was a raised road where the ladies and gentlemen could promenade in their Sunday best, the ladies especially knowing they wouldn't soil their long dresses in the mud and dust that existed throughout the town. Roads then were simply compressed gravel that became rivers of mud in wet weather and dust bowls in the summer months. This was Albin's description of the day. The way to Carisbrook Castle is through the High Street and Castle Hold, taking the footpath called the Mall that joins the western end of the town. It's about 200 yards in length and 8 yards wide. On the left it's partly shaded by lofty elms, under which some seats would be a desirable addition. On the right it's open to meadows, which are backed by Parkhurst Forest. It possesses also the further advantage of a good view of Mount Joy, Carisbrook Castle, the village of Carisbrook, and Priory Farm. From its contiguity to the town, it is the resort of the gay throng. At the end of this walk is the horse road to the village of Carisbrook and to the castle. Opposite is a narrow lane which is the pass where it is said Sir Hugh Tyrrell in 1377 defeated the French who were on the march to Carisbrook Castle. The lane is still called by the name it earned from that event, Deadman's Lane. Further on, the road divides at an angle, the left leading to the castle and the right to the village, both of them carriage roads. At a short distance, for the accommodation of foot passengers, there's an agreeable path over the fields that continues by an easy ascent until you arrive at the outer gate of the castle. This road is much improved, and the waste ground, which is planted with various shrubs, will in a few years form an agreeable contrast with the surrounding fields and meadows. By 1850, the situation had changed dramatically, and had you come to live in Newport at this time and were looking for a house, you would probably have sought the help of Mr. Pittis, the estate agent, even then. The recently reintroduced retro Pittis boards bear more than a nod to those days. Assuming you couldn't afford one of the imposing houses that were now being built on the Mall, he might have offered you a property in the grand-sounding Paradise Row.
Further investigation would have informed you this was the lane that joined the High Street with Powell Street. Just how this thoroughfare obtained its name is unknown, but in the years to come it would become home to ladies of easy virtue, and an area where the police were called on a regular basis to resolve disputes. By 1846, those houses appeared to be attracting the wrong sort of resident. A young woman named Elizabeth Braden and her father, both described as notorious character, were charged with being riotous and of assaulting a policeman. Their address was in Paradise Row, and while the father was fined 15 shillings, 75p, the daughter, who's described as the dreadful Eliza, was given 1 month in the Bridwell secure accommodation. At the same court, Sarah Costa, a neighbour, was given the same sentence for being drunk and disorderly. Within living memory there was a large property known as Castle Hold House, complete with tennis courts occupying the area to the right of the lane that later became Fowler's Garage and Car Showroom. You most probably have been put off by an address such as Deadman's Lane. Deadman's Lane is of course Trafalgar Road, and with Carisbrooke Mall and West Street formed a triangle where at this time there was a cricket field. There were certainly a few beer shops there. In 1849, Charles Moon, who kept the Soldier's Joy beer shop in the lane, was fined £1 for keeping a disorderly house. A year later, a soldier was charged with stealing an American clock, the property of the landlord of the Inkerman Arms beer shop in the same lane. It must have been a large clock, as the soldier stated he had been given it by a man in the street and he thought it was a coffin. The Crab and Lobster was yet another beer shop in which a group of soldiers was attacked by 2 local men, one wielding a poker and the other a spade. In 1856, Teresa Austin, described as an old Irish vixen and the terror of all her neighbours, whose address was given as being in a poor district of Deadman's Lane, was charged with brutally attacking a husband and wife, for which she was remanded in Winchester Jail for 1 month. Nearby was the unglamorous sounding Rag Row, which I believe became Laundry Lane. Such was the rough reputation of Gunville, a gentleman who moved there from the north told his friends he lived in Carisbrooke Garden Village. Scarrett's Lane too would not have been an obvious choice. It was home to several slaughterhouses. Cosham Street, later changed to South Street, was another area with more beer shops, plus the infamous Totine public house, where ladies of the night could always be found. Far better to consider a nice town such as an area in Chapel Street, Union Street or West Street that were quite newly erected. If you wanted to be a little further out of town, this was the time when the houses in Elm Grove were being built. In Stapler's Road, close to the then lace factory, houses were only erected in 1846. Mr. Pittis described them thus: having commanding views of Carisbrooke Castle, in an elevated position with the advantage of being adjacent to the town, without being liable to the peculiar burdens of the island's capital. Cosham House, which stood on the corner of South Street and Church Lytton, was for many years surrounded in mystery. In March 1777, an advertisement appeared in the Hampshire Chronicle offering it for let. It was described as being a large, newly built, sashayed dwelling having a large entrance hall and staircase. In addition, it had 2 large parlours and 1 small one, a manservant's pantry, a very good kitchen, larder and pantry, washhouse and brewhouse, plus a cellar and a wine vault. Upstairs there was a drawing room, 4 good bedchambers, 4 garrets and a laundry. Outside there was a large barn that could be used as a coach house, a stalled stable for 6 horses and a large backyard. Behind the house there was a walled garden that was well turfed, gravelled and planted, all things that made it an ideal property for a genteel family. In 1843, 2 years after it was sold, the owner, having been burgled several times in a short space of time, lay in wait and shot 2 soldier intruders, killing one of them. The second was severely cut by glass atop the high surrounded wall. Today, as in Morrison's, you'll be walking on the site of Cosham House, which was demolished in the early 1850s.
Over to My View by Alan Marriott, and the headline is Prison Site's Gain is High Street Pain. The revelation the Isle of Wight Council may be looking at a new hub for public services on the Camp Hill prison site was delivered not as a slick, carefully crafted announcement, but as a side note in Councillor Chris Whitehouse's update to his Newport West constituents. Oops. Not wishing to deny the importance of Councillor Whitehouse's missives to his ward, the whole announcement was somewhat amateurish, with the council spokesman seeking to distance itself from the controversial call by tossing the grenade back to the Ministry of Justice, which owns the prison site. It all sounds fine and dandy, with a plethora of public bodies on the site, doing everything from saving lives, in the case of the 999 services, to saving money by closing toilets, libraries and many other things as austerity dictates. The big question for me, though, is what on earth will they do with County Hall? This Grade 1 listed beauty of a building commands wonderful views over Coppins Bridge roundabout and the nightlife hotspot that contains nightclubs, restaurants and a cinema. So why would the developers not be queuing up to hand over sackfuls of cash to turn it into a retail and residential paradise, mirroring those on the old pub site, the Publican, as I recall, in South Street, and the Bijou Malls of the Upper High Street? OK, I might be having a bit of a cheese dream, but you get my point. Where will the demand for such an investment come from when Newport's town centre, the charming Node Hill apart, seems to be dying on its feet? This is not just a problem from the island's county town. Many other towns and cities around the UK are suffering the effects of internet, supermarket and out-of-town shopping. To put it bluntly, high streets are in decline. Discount stores, phone shops, charity outlets and restaurants apart. I would love to see the regeneration ideas for the County Hall site before millions of pounds are spent upping sticks to Camp Hill to leave a monstrous hole in the middle of our county town. Perhaps Councillor Whitehouse, Stewart and others would care to share. They seem to be floating a lot of plans at the moment for regeneration and refurbishment of some of the island's key sites, which is all well and good if the plans are realistic and not simply an exercise in hoping and wishing.
The article by Jonathan Young, Freedom Can't Be a Bully's Charter. In the US state of Virginia, a cyclist named Jill Brinscombe happened upon Donald Trump's motorcade. Not being a fan, she gave him the one finger salute. The image flashed around the world. It struck a chord with many, but Miss Briskman's employers were less impressed. They sacked her on the spot. There wasn't any due process to be gone through because Virginia is a fire-at-will state. So a classic cultural clash over whose freedom is the more important. In Virginia, at least, an employer's freedoms clearly trump, no pun intended, an individual's rights to freedom of expression, whatever the First Amendment may say. Here on the island, we often seem to be squabbling about whose freedoms are more important. The simplistic starting point for some is an assertion you can say what you like, however hurtful it may be. However, many of the other person's freedom it tramples underfoot, so long as it doesn't break any laws. A recent example is, of course, the freedom of non-heterosexuals to demonstrate their pride in who they are, versus the freedom of others to lampoon them for doing so. It generally comes down to an argument between freedom to and freedom from, and there isn't, of course, an absolute answer. Lampooning is a journalistic stock in trade. When it punctures over-inflated egos, it's richly deserved. Who it's okay to pick on and who isn't, though, is a question which can't be ignored, and nor can the possible consequences of getting it wrong. This is where the basis of shock jock journalism becomes a problem. There seemed to be an assumption on the part of recent County Press contributor Dan Eckersley in exploring the mercifully less mind-strewn terrain of running as a hobby. The purpose of these columns is to generate controversy for the sake of it, with gratuitous attacks on groups of individuals treated as acceptable collateral damage. Actually, no, and I hope this isn't a widespread misapprehension. If that were this newspaper's strategy for parting readers from their 90p's, I'm sure there's someone who would have told me by now. I have a friend who's fond of telling me religion is the cause of most wars. I tell him he's wrong. What causes war is religious intolerance. It variously involves one lot of people telling another lot how they should live their lives, what they can and can't do with their bodies, trying to restrict the celebration of faith, refusing to accept them as neighbours, and so on. And nasty, bullying, militant atheism is hardly less corrosive. So since the season of peace and goodwill is almost upon us, I offer this unselfish wish list. In the interests of freedom of expression, I wish Julia Briskman in Virginia could get a better boss, and in the interests of world peace, I wish the rest of our American cousins could do so as well. On the island, I wish everyone could march, run or proceed on pogo sticks, with or without banners, to places of worship or elsewhere, without being set upon in print or otherwise. If democracy means anything, it's not too much to ask.
Now we're moving to Behind the News by Megan Baines, and this is one charity's new take on the overindulgence of Black Friday. The headline is How to Let Second-Hand Furniture Be Your First Choice, and it's an article about the company Storeroom. Today may be Black Friday, but an Isle of Wight charity is encouraging islanders to buy nothing new instead. Storeroom 2010, run and managed by husband and wife team Nick and Wendy Miller, began in 2000 to help those coming out of hostel accommodation and prison. Nick said lots of people who had drug problems were being given flats, and it was just setting them up to fail. You're putting them into a room with nothing, and they get stuck in an addiction cycle. The charity began small, with Nick driving furniture across the island. Wendy said Nick would get a call that someone had a sofa, so he'd go and pick it up and look at his list to see who needed a sofa and would drive it to them. Over the past 17 years, Storeroom has grown from a few vans and garages to a large warehouse on Mariners Way, Cowes. After lottery funding began to dry up in 2010, Wendy and Nick began running the charity like a business. I hate saying that word business because it isn't a business, but in order to survive, we have to run it that way, said Nick. We call ourselves a furniture reuse charity. Since 2000, the charity has saved more than 1 million kilos of furniture from landfill, the equivalent of 5,588 average size armchairs. Anyone can buy from the warehouse, but those referred from a support agency are offered a discount. Spare money is channelled into storeroom education, which provides free or low-cost accredited qualifications for people on trade-based courses. Apprentice Luke Marsh is training at Storeroom, and he said, I enjoy being around customers and giving back to the community. We want to encourage people not to buy new. Storeroom has 13 volunteers, some of whom began as job centre referrals and have stayed on once their work experience ended. Shop manager and warehouse supervisor Steve Brock began more than 3 years ago as a referral before staying on as a volunteer. Last November, he became an employed member of staff. Steve said, it's very enjoyable. I've always done customer-facing jobs and it's amazing what you see in here. The storeroom is also in the process of building polytunnels overseen by educational coordinator Sue Wendes. She said, in the spring, we're hoping to push this forward in line with our sustainability. We're looking at bringing on a group of younger people for qualifications in manufacturing and retail. It's a whole system of work we're putting into place. In 2016, shoppers were estimated to have spent more than $4 billion over the Black Friday weekend on new goods. And in line with the Black Friday tradition, Storeroom 2010 is offering 50% off all armchairs and sofas. Wendy said, I think part of the idea is to encourage people on low incomes. There is an alternative to going out and blowing all their cash or getting things on weekly payments, which is never a good idea. We're trying to highlight reuse and recycling. Why not let second-hand be your first choice?
We now move on to What's On with a couple of things for you. 21st Tree Festival from the 7th to the 10th of December. Over 200 decorated trees in 7 venues. Proceeds to local and national charities, refreshments, Saturday group lunches, a range of supporting events. And the place where the trees is Bryston Church, Methodist Church, Moddeston Church, the Three Bishops, the Isle of Wight Pearl, the Reading Room, Wilberforce Hall and Santa Snowy Grotto. Venues are open daily from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Well, that's all we have now for Weekender. So it's goodbye from Sarah.
And it's goodbye from Paul.
This is the BBC.
This is In Touch, the magazine programme for people like me who are blind or partially sighted. I'm Peter Wight. Thanks for downloading this week's edition. Good evening. Tonight we meet a young video blogger who at only 21 has already made a huge name for herself and who's now looking to get into more traditional broadcasting as well. And I'll be introducing her to our second studio guest who has a long established record in broadcasting. They'll be comparing notes. But let's start with Lucy Edwards. Now Lucy has her own channel on YouTube where she gives her opinions and advice on a whole range of things at living with blindness. She gets thousands of views, which is not bad going for someone who lost her sight almost completely less than 4 years ago. Let's just start with hearing a flavour of what she does.
I wanted to come on here and tell you guys that I didn't used to want disabled friends. I didn't used to want to even think about my disability, and if I had someone at the other end of YouTube saying, look, you need that in your life, you need to go and find people that genuinely understand you and have been through it too, I never thought that I would know the importance of that.
And Lucy, we're going to come back to that later in the programme because it raises some very interesting issues. First of all, though, how and why did you get into vlogging? That's the correct term. You do call it vlogging, yeah?
It is, video blogging. I really enjoy it. The first time I got into it was the age of 17 when I first lost my eyesight. And I asked my boyfriend, please, could I be a YouTuber and you edit me? And it sort of became this coping mechanism to really try and connect with people on the internet who were like me. I thought there was no one really out there offering blind and visually impaired advice, and I wanted to be that person.
Had you done anything like that? Because I know you lost your sight in stages, which obviously makes it difficult. But I mean, had you done it at all before you lost your sight?
I hadn't. And it was kind of a thing where it became a dream of mine. The non-sighted Lucy part of me became a presenter in a way.
What do you need to get started? Give me a very quick user's guide.
I need 2 softbox lights, which just frame your face really nicely, and it's just easier for me as a non-sighted person to just put the lights in a certain place, put the camera in a certain place and go. And sometimes I even click the camera and the tripod without my boyfriend being there. So yeah, camera, lights, tripod, tick list.
Did it not occur to you just to do audio, given that you were a blind person?
Well, that's the thing. I wanted to smash stereotypes, Peter, and you wouldn't think that a blind girl could be on the internet on a video platform, so that's what I wanted to do.
Now, most people who experience losing sight, certainly a lot of those who we talked to on the programme, also tend to say they lose confidence. That doesn't seem to have happened in your case. How come?
No, it was this out-of-body experience really, where I just thought I either can let this sight loss define me and not fight it in a way, or I can come out of myself, prove to people that sight loss doesn't hold you back, and I can get on the internet and tell everyone how great you can still be, how fashionable, how much makeup you can put on, and you can be like just everyone else.
But you can't have done that straight away, surely. I mean, that makes it sound too simple.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, but I think I was doing all of this in the midst of trying to cope with it. So those videos that I did were very, very important to me because it kept me grounded and kept me my sense of self when going through my sight loss.
You did lose your sight in stages. Can you just explain the timetable, if you like?
Yes, definitely. So the timetable was, at the age of 8, I was rushed to the eye hospital after a routine eye check. No one knew what was going on with me. It was diagnosed as incontinenti pigmenti, which is a rare genetic condition that presents itself in people's skin. First of all, it's the female line of my genetics, and it's a recessive gene, so it's very, very rare to go in someone's eyes. And then at age of 11 it developed and I lost my right eye to it. And then at the age of 17 I was plunged into darkness, and it was just terrible. I was in the middle of my A-levels, and it was just one of the saddest times, and that's why I took up this vlogging, to have some light in my life.
Now, you explained some of the equipment you use, but that doesn't quite explain how you actually get yourself established in the way that you did. I mean, how did you do that?
So it's all about tagging, Peter, definitely. I came up with the title Blind Girl Does Her Own Makeup. It was very instrumental in getting the clicks on that video. I think blind girl and makeup on a video, everyone wants to know about it, really.
So you were deliberately piquing people's interest. And was this more aimed at sighted people than other blind people?
Yeah, so some of my videos are aimed at sighted, some non-sighted, but this specific video was aimed at sighted people to educate, because I want to educate and inform as well as have a community on my channel.
So where's this all leading, Lucy? Where do you see this going?
I really want to grow my channel even further. I would love to make a name for myself on the internet a bit more, even more, and I would love to be a professional presenter at the BBC. That is my goal.
Right, so you're doing an unashamed advert for yourself.
Yeah,
basically.
totally. Yeah.
Well, in this case and on this programme, that is permissible. And also with me in the studio is BBC reporter and programme maker Sean Dilley. Now, Sean's also worked for a number of other media outlets as well. Sean, just give us a very quick idea of some of the things that you've done.
I started off in radio, actually. I have a huge love of radio, so working very briefly at BBC Essex, very long time ago, for 3 months. Then I did commercial radio, initially as a producer, moved into on-air reporting and worked in the House of Commons for 8 years. From there, pretty much any media organisations, I either appeared on it or made content for them, moving to Sky News in 2014 as a general reporter. A week under 2 years from then, moved on to the BBC.
In that time, did you have problems, because you've done a range of things? Did your visual impairment crop up as an issue?
Yeah, oh yes, yeah. I think there are some fantastic schemes out there now to make things adaptive and adaptable. I'm not sure, in all good conscience, I could fully recommend broadcasting to people who are blind or severely sight impaired. Not for any reason beyond the fact, because it is the best job in the world in so many ways. But you're constantly having to prove yourself.
I'm not going to try and butt in every time, because I'm not going to be the professional broadcaster here, except to say that the trouble is when people ask you, how do you get in, there's not a route that you can explain. There isn't.
No.
It has not got a structure, broadcasting on the whole. There are schemes, but on the whole, people don't go in a neat line, do they?
Well, no, and also I think part of the reason, Peter, is that journalism and broadcasting, although they meet, they're not always precisely the same thing. And again, it's a personal view. You get some reporters who love the broadcast side of it. You know, they want to do really clever TV imagery, which we should all do. And I love TV imagery. And you'll get others who think, OK, I really like the digging and the investigating.
And just before we bring you two together, do you think that what Lucy's doing, the vlogging idea and blogging for that, do you think this is a good area for visually impaired people generally with ambitions to get into?
I absolutely do. It's possible to do fairly basic video editing to intermediate video editing on some software packages. And indeed, I've been up to Salford with a blind colleague to teach them a video editing package using shortcut keys as well. So
you're saying you could video edit with no sight?
You can video edit with no sight to a degree. So if you want to start sticking subtitles on there, then you need help to move the boxes into the right place. But yes.
Right. Lucy, you've already got your foot in the door at the BBC. You're currently working as a news apprentice with the disability website Ouch. This is your chance. We've got Sean here as a sitting target for you. What would you like to ask him?
I would love to ask you, how do you cope in terms of accessibility in your current job?
Do you mean in terms of, what, literally getting everywhere?
Yes, yeah. And also the tech side, because obviously I'm coming to it from a new perspective and just coming, I'm only a month in.
I think I understand what you're saying, and it is difficult, and I think we're lucky because of where we currently work. In the industry more generally, it's entirely variable, because not everybody has the same reasonable adjustment budgets, not everybody has the same sort of willingness and keenness to kind of be inclusive. So on the tech side, very variable. I've worked at places where newswires are not entirely accessible, and I've worked at places where they're generally much better about things, but you chase around forever to get a bit of technology. More generally, to finish my rather long answer, I'm kind of a field reporter. Earlier this year, I went knocking on the door of somebody we suspected had been a little bit naughty. And that was interesting from an accessibility and risk assessment point of view, because we had to prepare for the fact, is this person going to come out and want to hit me a bit?
Do they use the argument, which I used to use the argument, they're less likely to hit me, therefore I'm a good person to send? Have you used that, or is that a self-deprecating argument that we shouldn't encourage?
I think it would be an interesting one to send to what we call the high-risk safety people. No,
we didn't have high-risk safety people when I was a young reporter.
No, this is true. No, I think it's always going to have to be something we're realistic about. So, for instance, and I've been asked this an awful lot, I would never be a reporter in a war zone for one simple reason. I would be a liability. However, in my current job and previous job, I've done an awful lot of going around with people catching criminals. And I mean, on the more glamorous things, sometimes I'm talking about Cyril the Squirrel from Sheffield. So let's not say it's all James Bond. But I think you have to be fair to your colleagues and consider it. But then I think colleagues should be respectful and ask you before making decisions about you without you.
Mm. I mean, Lucy, is this the kind of thing that you've got in mind? Or, I mean, what kind of areas would you want to specialise in?
I love journalism and the way that I've been introduced to it. The way that my scheme operates is I'm grounded in journalism and working with the podcast Ouch, and to be honest, it's allowing me to expand my skill set, and that's what I'm looking for at the moment. Eventually, I'll want to go into presenting a bit more, but that's what I am leaning towards, and that's what my boss is allowing me to do, and it's very much in your hands, and they really listen to you, so I'm a massive advocate for it.
We talked about, Sean, the extent to which you're at a disadvantage, or to the extent to which people may doubt your ability to do it. I mean, do you think there is a problem in terms of, you know, the way interviews are done?
I've probably had about 40 interviews, 50 interviews, and I've not passed one of them, which is interesting.
So you've gone for what you might call fixed jobs and you've not got them?
Yeah, Lord, yes, absolutely. I've been for so many jobs over the years. And it's interesting because actually, in reality, we'd be rather unself-aware if we thought we were perfect for 40 jobs, but then we'd have to be a little bit naive to think that you're unsuitable for all of the 40 jobs that you were shortlisted for interview.
Mm. Lucy, do you think that you've made a point really of saying I'm out there to question stereotypes?
Yes.
Do you think that, you know, what I'm wondering is how easily visually impaired people can, as it were, doctor their image to be what other people want, and indeed how much we should do that.
Definitely. I mean, it is all about individuality, and I think that's what I promote on my channel, and just that's what I want to tell the world, that you can be whoever you want to be. And yes, specifically, I adjust my image because I love makeup. I feel that I don't need a mirror anymore because I'm so confident in the way I apply my makeup, and I control my appearance that way. But definitely my channel advocates to be who you want to be. And I can be a blind girl on the internet who's on a video platform because I want to be that. And if you want to be something different, go for it.
Lucy, I think we need to know a bit more about your personal story because it is quite interesting, and this confidence thing is quite interesting. I mean, you briefly at the beginning, you mentioned your boyfriend. I think that's been quite an important element, hasn't it, in your the way people will feel you've bounced back from losing your sight?
Massively. I mean, I have such a supportive boyfriend and family. I went blind 2 months into mine and my boyfriend's relationship. We were only 16 at the time. And the fact that he stood next to me at such a young age, I will never forget. And I think that's what has really brought us together, this experience that we've had. And it could tear some people apart, but it's brought us closer. At some points, maybe not, when I was being a bit grouchy, not knowing where something was. But we got through it, and yeah.
Let me be impertinent. Were there points where it might have broken up, where he might have said, this isn't the girl I started going out with, in a way?
Definitely, Peter. There were times about 2 years into my blindness that I thought I wasn't myself anymore. I was on antidepressants. I didn't really want to get out of bed. I had no ambition. And my boyfriend said to me, look, Lucy, you have to try and love yourself again, because if you don't love yourself, how am I meant to love you? And there were those conversations, but I'm glad he gave me that ultimatum in a way, because it told me, I want to be a presenter, I'm going to dream big and do it and be the girl that he fell in love with.
Peter, I'm wondering whether I can be cheeky and ask you a question now, Lucy. Why do you want to be a presenter?
Oh.
Sorry, I thought I'd throw you that one. I always ask people this. Why?
Yeah.
And I think you've got to be ready for anything in this business, Lucy, so you've got to be ready for that question.
Yeah, definitely. I love speaking to people. I love the fact that my voice is heard. I very much find my blindness at some points very frustrating, and maybe like you, a little fish in a massive pond that isn't really understood. And I believe that if I get my voice out there and I'm heard, it's amazing. And also I love hearing other people's stories and interviewing people.
See, that's interesting, Lucy, because I mean, again, that's more my side of things. So I like finding things out. I like bringing attention to things that, you know, shouldn't be, like bogus charity collectors, you know, earlier in the year, to abandoned 999 calls was a thing we did for the Today programme not too long ago. But actually hearing my voice, I mean, you can hear my voice now, it's not exactly too
very
enticing.
Nice, don't put yourself down.
But look, the thing is, what I say is, I think it's important to find the niche. I don't think I'm a massive fish, I'm a carp, not a killer whale. But I do think it's important to think of content and ideas. I think it's good to bring ideas to the table. But I think it's important to, you know, to want to achieve something beyond being on TV or on the radio, is my 2 pennies worth.
Except that I would say you could have been really honest, Lucy, and said what I would now say nearing the end of a career. I just like showing off. That's why I wanted to be a presenter. And I think that's actually true.
I love it.
One thing we must do before we end is to go back to the clip we heard at the beginning, because that was about the importance of mutual support that visually impaired people can give to each other. So we've been talking about whether people, you know, might be prejudiced against you. The interesting thing about that is you now advocate, you know, having visually impaired friends, which some of us may naturally have, but you not necessarily. You didn't always think that, did you?
No. In my school years, when I was going blind, I very much wanted to hide my cane. I didn't want a guide dog. I was adamant that I was not having any visually impaired friends, and that was it. But now I've found friends who are with different disabilities on the Extend scheme. I feel so fulfilled. I also have a blind friend who lives in Hastings, and we connect and I see her, and it is the best thing. Not that I don't value my boyfriend and all of the other sighted people in my life, because I feel like that is a part of me too, but it is so important, if anyone is listening to this, to have non-sighted and disabled friends.
And Sean, you work in a mainstream, very competitive world. Do you have other visually impaired friends?
Yeah, but I mean, not because they're visually impaired or blind. I mean, my wife is incredibly capable, and she is blind. She's no optic nerves, but gets out there, does the job. And we have our little social circle of people. Maybe I trained with another friend 18 and a half years ago with my first guide dog. I'm sounding old.
One final bit of advice from you to Lucy, who's starting out. She doesn't sound as if she needs a lot. But...
No, she sounds more confident than I am.
Well, but what would you say at what is still the start of her career?
Do you know what? Honestly, I think it's an amazing career. And although I'm possibly cynical, I think go out there, never be afraid to bring ideas to the table. And above all, do something I probably haven't enough. Enjoy it. Chill.
That's all that we've got time for. Lucy, thank you very much, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much, Peter, and thank you, Sean.
And Sean, thank you for coming in. We want to hear from you with your reactions. If you've tried vlogging or indeed blogging, tell us about what you've done and how it's been received. You can contact our action line for 24 hours after the programme on 0800 044 044, email in touch at bbc.co.uk, or press contact us on our website. That's www.bbc.co.uk/intouch. And you can download tonight's programme from there too. From me, Peter Wight, producer Cheryl Gabriel, Lucy and Sean, goodbye.